Symbolic history through sight and sound. 9. Gothic, ground, and vault. The Old Testament, Augustine says in the City of God, is nothing but the new covered by a veil, and the New Testament is the unveiling of the Old. What Scripture tells of Abraham really happened, but it was at the same time a prophetic image of things to come. From Paul through the Dark Ages, Isidore of Seville, Bede, Irish crosses, that doctrine of correspondence, sounds biblical resonances. In the rise to Gothic, pointing prediction to some heretical today or tomorrow. So from Suger's Saint-Denis, Joachim de Flores points his eternal gospel. This flood of the 6th century Vienna Genesis must unveil the always expected coming. Yet here, as with Augustine, or the chant named for Ambrose, the classical heritage still clothes timeless symbol in the suavities of earth. With the Ashburnham Pentateuch a century later left, the temporal veil is being stripped away, preparing for the ultimate destruction of the Saint-Sever's apocalypse, right about 1050, that dimensionless vision to which medieval realism would reduce the sensory itself. In Dark Age chronicles, such fabulous judgment walks over Europe. Flodoard, 944. Balls of fire were seen rushing through the air, which in their flight set houses ablaze. But when faced by the cross and holy water, they were driven away. It is said that demons in the shape of horsemen destroyed a church, then used its timbers to beat down the walls of a building of strong cement that had long stood on Montmartre. Yet at the heart of that ghostly world of hardening chant and of Guido's diaphony, Sexta hora sedit super puteum. A colossal energy has been released, which points to another future. The Christian reconquest in the faith frame of dimensional actuality. From the first awakening, the Romanesque had set unconscious sights on what, by the 15th century and Uccello, would be clear, the perspectival endowment of the sacred with the incarnate power of Renaissance. In music, Binchois, was not the world lost foreshadowed in the chromatics of the Delphic Ode, the moody drama of the Hellenistic Battle of Alexander, where marvelous techniques enforce the heaped outwardness of the Platonic cave? But by 1066, the battle joy of Homer is renewed in the fierce Norman, then troubadour exhilaration of mythic encounter, the Bayeux tapestry with Pierre Vidal. As in the Song of Roland, stripped zeal precipitates the lines of action. Where is your sword, which is called Halte Claire, with its hilt of gold, with its jewelled gear? I had no time to draw, cried Oliver, as he pierced mail with the trunk of a spear. Où est votre respect, qui halte clair ad non? D'or est li hels, et de cristal li pons. Ni la poi trahir, Oliver respond, car de ferir oi jo si grand besoin.
Trop soggiornar et estar en un loc.
And again that clean renewal bears in linear potentiality the exploratory dynamic of Uccello, the battle music of Isaac. As we would know from the Song of Roland, God sent his angel cherubim and Saint Michael of the Peril and Gabriel with them to bear the Count's soul into paradise. Or in history, from the sanctification of William's conquest of England, it is hard to distinguish between the secular eruption and its transforming embrace in a church which, as the priest says in Faust, can digest every ill-gotten gain, kann ungerechtes Gut verdauen. By the Italy of Machiavelli's birth, the profane stood on the point of declaring itself as an independent realm, having its own values, of which the visual sign is exactly that filling in, like the chordal progressions of music, of its spatial and human weft. Whereas what has seemed most medieval is the transcending entrainment of earthly power in the sacred synthesis, the 11th and 12th century arching and vaulting of the new Romanesque, in theology the reasoned proofs of Anselm, in music the horizon of note against note polyphony, spread from England to northern Italy and from Spain probably to the Rhine, though German examples are lacking. To experience again that massive forehall to Gothic, hear the first known three-part piece, about 1130, a Congaudeant Catholici, from the Compostela manuscript in Spain, though there ascribed to Magister Albertus of Paris, and with it this Angoulême, the interior of Le Mans, and fountainhead of Romanesque in England, the Cathedral of Durham. Durham, first cathedral completely ribbed and vaulted in stone, 1104, the transverse arches raised to points to achieve one height with the semicircular diagonal crossings of the bays. No doubt these religious structures, by the organizing risk that raised them, agrarian monasteries shading into urban cathedrals, were products of the new economy and temporal sway, that investment bank St. Bernard accused. Thus money is drawn up with ropes of money. As if Moissac portal, 1110 to 15, opened to the exchange and to Wall Street, though surely the abstract ubiquity of greed, cupiditas, differs with every style complex. Whatever earth awakening, Bernard's knights and hunters winding their horns, this judgment gate required, converts to a more than earthly service. Such sacred ingestion fuels the Gothic dialectic of sic et non, ground and vault. How much more bluntly and somberly of that creed ground was the first monumental stone carving in the West, from the Irish crosses of the early 900s, this of Muirdach at Monaster Boyce, also a judgment, flanked from the sin of Adam and Eve upward by correlated scenes. Without comparison of art value, what this Dark Age precursor lacks is just the melting flash and flow. Place any detail, this Adam and Eve and the murder of Abel, in its Paleolithic and primitive pre-humanity, heavy pathos and dark vacancy, Abel like a trepanned frog against a 12th century cognate. Here Giselbertus' flight to Egypt at Autun. Is it not clear that what was to vault from that ground was the fresh humanity of Gothic love? The motion of Roman Christianity was the repudiation and denial of the material. As long as that downward eddy prevails, we conceive ourselves as in the Dark Ages. But in the 10th century of this Celtic cross, by paradox and anomaly, the vortex changes sign. The birth force, though of the same creed and timeless loyalty, creates, as in Suger, an upward whirl of incorporation by which the passions of earth are more and more lifted to a firm spirituality. To know how far and how suddenly this nascent tenderness has found, as with Abelard's theory of atonement, the western road of sensuous devotion, we have only from Giselbertus, with the close of a 12th century Benedicamus, as beautiful as by Leonin. To leap 3 centuries to the soft Italian mingling of Gothic and early Renaissance in Gentile da Fabriano's handling of the same gospel scene, smoothing the brushwork of nature and the human caress, while we shift in music to a passage from Dunstable's Quam Pulchra Es, sung by the same Brussels Pro Musica Antiqua. There must have been Dark Age arts which stood outside the church, unincorporated, even in defiance, but what was then rare is now irrecoverable. If the secular paintings of Charlemagne's palace showed precursive talent, our nearest approach is in the startling humanity of the sacred frescoes found at Castelseprio. So too with Charlemagne's collection of German songs, destroyed by his son Louis the Pious for their pagan license.
O admirabile veneris idolum, cuius materiae nihil te protegat, quis
Only with the 10th and 11th centuries and in Latin do manuscripts begin to record the passionate songs that boil up from the cauldron of student loves. This to a boy, veneris idolum.
puris ingenio non sentias dolum, cloto te diligat, que baiulat colum.
Others are known only as poems. Iam dulcis amica venito. Come, dear as my heart to me. Come, sweetheart, into my chamber. A poem touched with nature and romantic anticipation. Alone in the wood I have loved hidden places. Ego fui sola in silva, et dilexi loca secreta. So too the 11th century Catalan, veri dulcis. Where are the visual parallels? The castle ruins have lost their tapestries. Theocritan delights in Spanish Romanesque are biblical. Details of Christ's birth announced to the shepherds. Are these stiff pastorals reminders of vernal precursors, where northern stock had flowed out into the Greco-Roman and Byzantine Moorish challenge of former cultures, as if in cultural combustion that heavy German fuel kindled first in thinnest attenuations? In Byzantium there was no such admixture. In that unviolated sanctum of classical lore, it had been easy in the awakening which began there also in the 10th century to revive ancient forms, though this river god, melody, and echo attend David playing his harp. But the facility was a measure of the unfertilized and retrospective thinness of the achievement.
Tempus transit gelidum, mundus renovatum.
And it seems almost a law of nature that the prodigy of Norman germination in the Sicilian soil of lifestyles, Greco-Byzantine and Persian Moslem, which made 12th century Palermo the rich and enlightened wonder city of Europe, should fulfill the proverb, tost allumis, tost extantis, soon kindled, soon burnt out, though the flare touched off a succession of Holy Empire darings, always more anti-clerical and pre-Nietzschean, from the Carmina Burana to Frederick II.
Iam florea, iam fronea, silva pomis densatum.
In Romance France, a like fusion of strains and ideas produced, after the Eastern stimulus of the First Crusade, a wider break with the gaunt creed ground. This enamel from the Meuse. At the center of the whole troubadour and trouvère motion of knighthood, courtly love, music, and decorative art, verse itself may stand as a proto-Renaissance indicator. Against the heavy tread or the short-lined, brittle sharpness of church Latin, the rhythms, the stanza forms of Provence expatiate in the veiled aesthetics of pentameter yearning, which would spread to Italy and from Petrarch back over Europe, slowly ripening from the mystery of Romanesque devotion to the swelling harmonies of Renaissance. There is no clear road from the stridence of the Gothic sequence, when for spite and malediction wretches feel the flame's affliction, render me thy benediction, to Spenser's measure. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. But the 12th century pentameters of Blondel, à l'entrant d'Este, Calitance commence, at the start of summer, when the dance begins, are on the way to that, or to Shakespeare, from you I have been absent in the spring. As the melody points to Ars Nova, Dowland, recitative, let Max Miley's Anthology Sonore recording sound in the dearth of secular art, where the love and warmth of Provence linger, in the cloister of Saint-Trophime at Arles. That the troubadour thrust was also violent. Bertrand de Born makes unforgettable, as he stalks with the sowers of discord through Dante's hell, a passage pound who also dug him up in a sestina, may God damn forever all who cry peace, has paraphrased. Surely I saw, and still before my eyes goes on that headless trunk that bears for light its own head swinging, gripped by the dead hair, and like a swinging lamp that says, ah me, I severed men, my head and heart ye see here severed, my life's counterpart. Not even the volcanic Roman revivals of Saint-Gilles-du-Gard near Arles stage such tragic outbreak. Only the history itself, as always with a prophetic art, love and song, commerce, religious reform, and personal mysticism simultaneously asserting themselves, the heretical movement of the Cathari, or pure ones, rising to a genuine revolt against the Roman Church until it was suppressed early 13th century in the crusade which devastated the most flourishing region of France. That the carvings of Saint-Gilles-du-Gard should range from the gentle humanity of this youthful apostle to the almost daimonic stare of these reform precursors evokes the recurrent ambivalence of 12th century, the arts a continual bridge over the temporal cleavage, a symbolic containment of the historical tragedy. It was the beauty and exposure of troubadour love that it enjoyed an aristocratic island of proto-Renaissance refinement, a sort of detachment from the fierce dispute betwixt damnation and impassioned clay, though it turned out hardly island enough, a brief chance for romance pentameters of love's idolatry. Not so with the Goliards or wandering scholars, fired in the crucible of church and state. The 12th century amplification of passion they share with this Vézelay capital of the devil and profane music, as with the commoner Burana Magdalene tempted by unguents, was both in and out of the church, a ferment where the dark age ground sprouts sexual vegetation, to seed over centuries the love gardens of Bosch. For the creed ground, to repeat, is ideal. There is no historical winter when Christendom merely sheltered in the ascetic fold. Even in the 9th century there had been Gottschalk, 300-year precursor of the arch-poet, who comes now seething inwardly with fierce indignation. Estuans intrinsecus ira vehementi, that archipoeta, most eruptive peak of 12th century genius. A Rhenish Villon who flames an obscure course over Europe in the train of the Archbishop of Cologne and the Italian court of Barbarossa, a man who saves us from easy generalizations about the age of faith, Waddell, seething over inwardly with fierce indignation. In my bitterness of soul, hear my declaration. I am of one element, levity my matter, like another withered leaf for the winds to scatter. Yet the mold breaker is also of the age, betraying in self-twisted intensity the marks of the faith grip he opposed. Like the despair and tit-tugging lust on another Vézelay capital, his energy flames against its own, greedier for all delight than heaven to enter in. Since the soul in me is dead, better save the skin. Voluptatis avidus, magis quam salutis, mortuus in anima, curam gero cutis. How could earthly blessing unfold, held in a timeless creed which turns its wishes into deadly sins, its peace to sloth, its love to lust, appetite to gluttony, nobility to pride, commerce and politics to covetous envy and wrath? No wonder there are kingly crowns in this leviathan mouth of hell. Had not Gregory VII declared, 1081, who does not know that kings and leaders are sprung from those who, ignorant of God, by pride, plunder, perfidy, murders, in a word, by almost every crime, the devil, who is the prince of this world, urging them on, have striven with blind cupidity and intolerable presumption to dominate over their equals, namely over men. When Greek daimon, or spirit, became demon, no temporal power was left without its damning name. The 7 deadly sins, let them dance. Staggering within the medieval energizing of earth and counterforce intensification of hell, the vitality of that dance. The liveliest thing in the 12th century English rule for nuns, Ancren Rula, are those condemned sins, grinning at their late Gothic followers in Langland, Dunbar, the Mystery